Today, the Bakerloop bus route opened, so let's go ride it and talk about what it is and what it has to do with the Bakerloo line. Anyway, so we're gonna keep going south on the Bakerloo line today, although this is a southbound platform we've just gotten off at. But we're doing it on a bus this time, because the Bakerloo line has been extended with a railway replacement service. Even though there's no railway to replace, at least that's not been built yet. Right, where's the buses at? Where is the buses at? Buses should be this way. Where are we going actually? Where's the L1? I've gotten on a bus maybe twice here, ever. This isn't super convenient, I can't lie.
Yeah, this is like the least convenient way to get to it.
Yeah. Where is that? Let me zoom in. Superloop sign. Yeah, that's the bus. To the station,
Yeah.
which should have known. The bus stop is at this exit, which probably
It is
it would have been nice if they signed this, but
It's saying this is Bakerloo.
3 minutes. Slightly separate from Superloop, different branding and everything, and it is new. So how did we get to this situation? Why are we taking a railway replacement bus that replaces a railway that hasn't been built yet? Let's go through a quick history of the Bakerloo line real quick. The Bakerloo line was originally built in 1906 from Baker Street to Lambeth North, soon extended to Elephant and Castle and to Edgware Road by 1907. By 1913 it went up to Paddington and up to the London North Western Railway lines, which it took over all the way to Watford Junction, which is quite far north. Then in the 1930s the connection to the Metropolitan Railway was built, with new tunnels from Baker Street to Finchley Road and taking over the stopping services up to Stanmore. This today is part of the Jubilee line, but at the time, the Bakerloo line was quite extensively serving northwest London.
Buses replace trains between
Cool. However, on the other side of the Bakerloo line, we didn't quite see the same expansion. The first serious plans to extend the Bakerloo line from the south were proposed in the 1930s and 40s. A proposed extension of the line to Camberwell with a reconstruction of Elephant and Castle station. However, with the Metropolitan line takeover being prioritised and the Second World War starting, this never really got going. To solve the issue of turn-back capacity at Elephant and Castle, and capacity on the Bakerloo line in general, we eventually got the Jubilee line, taking over the line to Stanmore and its own parallel line in the city, meaning Elephant and Castle station wouldn't need to be expanded. This removed the operational need for a new terminus station and therefore part of the reason to extend the line. This also left the Bakerloo line with quite a bit of extra capacity, trains running every 2 or 3 minutes or so, which is quite a bit less than the other lines in central London. There was some talk about extension in the 70s and 80s, specifically toward the newly rebuilt Docklands, but the Jubilee line ended up doing this, along with the DLR being built. It wasn't until 2006 that a Bakerloo line extension was being considered again, with a TfL report suggesting several options, including Camberwell, Streatham, Beckenham and Hayes, and potentially taking over some mainline routes. But again, this extension was forgotten, other projects that seem more important taking all the attention, such as the Northern Line extension to Battersea Power Station and new trains for the Piccadilly line. Then, finally in late 2014, TfL started consultations on the route of the line, with construction proposed to start in the late 2020s and be done by 2030. And this actually had lots of support from the public and the local boroughs, except Bromley, who feared losing fast trains to London Bridge. The Lewisham extension turned out to be the best liked option, with further extension to Hayes to happen some other time in the future. At this point, it actually seemed like the extension was going to happen, with sites for stations and ventilation shafts being surveyed and safeguarded, and everyone supporting it, except Bromley, who was making a fuss again about the line needing to serve Bromley town centre, but also saying that passengers wouldn't prefer the line, even though a majority of people in Bromley said that they supported it in the original consultation. I don't know, Bromley is weird. Anyway, at the start of 2020, funding started appearing from Southwark Council, TfL, and a proposed land value capture tax, basically where the new underground line would increase the value of land, so the owners of the land would pay some of that increased value to help fund the project. This was done for the Elizabeth line before, and it actually raised $4 billion towards it. The route was then safeguarded, waiting for proper funding to become available, but COVID happened literally a few months later, and any chance of funding disappeared for at least a decade. And the developers along the route weren't happy, as they couldn't build more houses and shops without good transport links. So that brings us to today, where we're definitely ready for a Bakerloo line extension, and almost everyone wants it, but there just isn't money to build it. And that brings us to the topic of today's video, the Bakerloop Express Bus. This is basically an express bus running the entirety of the extension of the Bakerloo line, and also serving Waterloo Station and New Cross Gate to get some sort of transport link into the area for cheap and allow some housing to get built. This is important as this area has lots of developable land, like car parks, light industry, and abandoned buildings. There's a huge demand for new housing in London right now. This bus allows some housing to go up in this area, but for the rest of it, we'll need the actual Bakerloo line to get built, as in order to put in new housing, you need good transport links. So where's the Bakerloop name coming from? Well, it's the Bakerloo line and the Superloop, which is a network of express buses around outer London. The Bakerloop is sort of branded as part of the Superloop network, but it's a bit different with specially branded Bakerloo line buses, which are brown instead of red and have Bakerloo line seats. Well, not really, just a pattern on the seats. It's been made clear that this is the first step in a Bakerloo line extension, not some random express bus to replace it. And it's mostly to demonstrate that the demand is there to actually build out a railway extension. Generally, the Superloop buses have sort of solved the same problem in other places in London, specifically outer London, providing better transport links on a small budget, and they've been quite successful, although not perfect. They probably don't have all the dedicated infrastructure like bus lanes that they should have, but some branding does go a long way, with ridership increasing on the Superloop and Express routes by 9% more on average than other routes in London. This route, the BL1, is free for the first week, but then will charge the same fare as any other bus. It should run every 12 minutes at most times, and every 15 minutes on Sundays and early mornings and late evenings. Which isn't quite underground frequency, even the Bakerloo line, but it's not bad for an express bus. And it's definitely reasonable for now, and if it's really successful, shouldn't be too hard to improve. It will also be interesting to see how many riders are making new trips not previously made on buses, or how many riders are just moving off of other slower routes. But yeah, it's cool to see at least something's being done to serve the area that the Bakerloo line extension would have. There may not be enough money for the Bakerloo line extension, but subscribing to the channel is free and you won't miss out on new videos. And we've also got a Discord server if you're really interested and want to talk about stuff. And yeah, I guess that's the end of the video. I'll see you next time, and yeah. Cool. Okay.
I can taste colors now.
Why is that the first thing on the recording now? Right. Okay. Okay.